Hello, hello, hello. Today I'm talking with Maryse Meinen. We talked about being perfectly imperfect, how her imposter syndrome keeps her from being arrogant, and discussing mansplaining with her daughter. I'm Yves from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello, hello everyone, and hello Maryse. Is that how I should pronounce your name in English?
Yeah, absolutely, Eve.
Okay, and well, what I want to show, I want to start with showing where we are. And I'm here recording this from Belgium in Ghent, and we're moving to the Netherlands, Leiden, if I'm correct, or I'm not sure.
Well, actually, since last week, it's now Zoeterwoude, which is pretty near. I'm trying to peek if I can find it, but yeah, it's a bit more to the south. It's closer to get to Ghent now.
Yeah. Oh, damn it. Yeah, I knew that
Yeah,
you were traveling, but I didn't,
yeah.
I forgot to update
Well,
the
I forgot to
location, of
tell
course.
you, so, but it's
Well,
still,
but
it's there.
I was already happy that it was a city where I knew something, because Leiden is one of these small, well, small. I don't know how big it is, but it's. If I remember correctly, I've learned that I think was it Rembrandt was from there, is if I'm
Yeah,
correctly. So
yeah,
that
yeah.
is I don't know much about art, but that's one of the things I know, and I know about the Netherlands. And that is like we saw in not that far away from us. And the time on my side is 24:09 in the evening. What's the time on your side?
It's the same.
It's exactly the same, because
Yeah,
Belgium and the Netherlands, we are in the same time zone. And
yeah.
for us, that's rather obvious, but it might not be for everybody. So
No.
that's why I want to bring that on as well. Well, Maryse, for the few people that don't know you, could you, before we jump into the questions, introduce yourself a little bit? What do you
Well,
want people to know about you?
that's a good question, and I never know what to answer, Eve. Um,
Mhm.
and that
That's
is
why I
think
ask it to you, because I prefer not to answer it for you, because that's even harder, I would say.
Yeah, well, and it's because I always say, and you know that of me, that there is not so much interesting to know about me. I'm just Maryse. I've been around agile for a while by now. I know a few people. Um, but I think most importantly, I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I'm a woman. I'm a friend. I try to be a friend to people. Um, I try to be a good family member. I try to look after people. And to be honest, if you ask me, who are you? Then I'd mostly say, well, I try to be a real human being. And that also sounds very presumptuous, which is precisely not what I would like it to sound. But it's actually that simple. All the other things, I've been around agile for a while and I've done some stuff and I know some things of product management. And lately I'm big into sustainability and I've done a few bits and bobs there too. But all of that in the end doesn't really matter. I try to be a good doing human being. I try to be a good human being. And that's, well, if you ask me who I am, then I'd say, well, an aspiring good person.
How easy is that to be a good human person for you?
Sorry, I missed the first part of your question.
So how easy or hard is that for you to
Ah,
do? To,
ah. That's very difficult. We can never be perfect. Well, I don't know about other
Mm,
people, but I definitely can't. And I still think that one should try and be the best version of yourself, like every day. As
mhm,
you probably know, and maybe some other viewers may know that too, I'm also a Stoic practitioner. And
mhm,
Stoicism, ancient philosophy, always teaches us to, well, let's stop talking about how to be a good human being, just be one.
mm,
And so this is really, I try to practice that every day, and I try to not ponder too long on what good or not good would be, which is not always possible. But very often, deep down, you know what is the good thing to do. And then I try to actually do that, because being good is actually doing good, I'd say. It's not so much in what you say when you're sitting around the campfire and all the contemplations you can have about what one should do in this or that situation. It's actually far, well, it's just the simple things that make a difference.
Yeah, it
So,
reminds me of the joke of that people saying that, yeah, it was I was the perfect parent until I had kids.
yeah.
Like, yeah,
Well, exactly, exactly. Yeah. I couldn't have put that more beautifully. Yeah, that's
it's
precisely it. Yeah.
yeah, we imagine all these kind of things about being a good human being and being a good parent, and then you're in a certain situation, and then you realize that, oh, staying calm, for example, with
Yeah.
children is not that easy as we
Oh,
thought it was before we had children.
yeah.
Uh, and well, I like to use the idea of children because they always bring on, well, they show us a mirror on how we are, and they show us
Yeah.
a version of what we don't want. And of course, the older they get, the more they put that mirror very front and center, like, okay, that's what you say, but this is how you do and whatever. And then yeah, it's yeah,
Yeah.
it makes it harder.
Yeah.
um and of course, they don't help with having enough sleep, which doesn't help at other levels, I would say.
No.
So yeah, but thanks for adding that part, because indeed that's I think this shows it also when you said I try to be a good human being. It might sound pretentious, but like you with the extra thing that you added now, it's indeed, it's not easy, but yeah, we try to do that, and we do it the best version of that we can today, and hopefully that's a better version than yesterday, and maybe the next days it will be
Yeah.
some better.
Yeah, exactly. However messy that process is, I mean, it's never a clean cut path or anything. And I'm far from, I would never say that I actually am a good person. I just try to be one. And that's
Very good
I'm
nuance indeed.
perfectly imperfect in all of that. So, yeah, that's maybe good to add. But I wanted well, you know, when introducing myself, I always think, well, I have a few labels uh, that I could identify with. Maybe I should have said I identify as a woman. Um, and all of these things are true. And still, when it push comes to shove, when it all boils down to it, none of it really matters. I try to
Mm.
be a mom, and a person, and well, all of these things. So there's that.
Thanks for adding that. That's already the whole package, I would say. So that is very nice. With already some, well, for people that don't know, you bring a lot of nuance and a lot of this. So yeah, and I recognize you in what you said. So indeed, I would say that is not surprising an answer. So anyway, so thanks for doing that. Let's jump into that first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but still has influenced you in who you are?
Um, That's not such an easy question,
Mhm.
because I tend to be pretty open and pretty transparent.
Mm,
Um, so I would say that there is not so much that people wouldn't know about me. Of course, not everybody knows everything about me, um, but there is not there are no hidden gems in my in my history, in my past.
But
Uh,
are there things that people, because, well, you're not 15 anymore, so I can imagine that,
no.
unfortunately. Um, but I would say it might be that there were things that were in your past, had a big influence that maybe you don't always think about talking about, just because, not that you want to hide it, but because you don't think about it.
Well, it's a but what I was thinking about with regard to this question is, and now that is something that some people do actually know already. Uh, Still, however, I think it's important because it's hugely influenced in who I. It's usually influenced me into who I am now these days. So I do think it's important, and I'll take the opportunity to explain. As you know, Eve, I've got a huge imposter syndrome, which is sometimes really hindering me. I don't want to show it off. It's not something I wear proudly on my sleeve. I'm just saying that because it's hindering me. Sometimes it bothers me that I can't just um, do things with a little more confidence, or maybe not confidence, but let's say trust in myself. You don't have to be overconfident, but by now I'm 46, not 15. By now you'd say, well, I'd like to say that I know what I can do and what I can't do, which is fine, which would be, you know what you can and what you can't do. But that's really difficult for me. And that is because I grew up with a, well, narcissist father. And I am a pretty, well, my brain works pretty well. So I used to come home with high grades. But it wasn't always, well, in the Netherlands, we have a system grading from 0, or actually 1 till 10. So 10 being the top mark. And I often came home with high marks. And then, well, if I came home with a 9, so which was not the perfect 10, but a 9, my father would always say, oh, why wasn't this a 10? Um, and this is only an example, of course, but this was woven into everything that happened in my youth, in my past. And that has hugely influenced that feeling in me that it's never quite good enough. Now, this is not something that I don't often talk about this. It's also not really surprising, I'd say. I mean, many people probably guessed it. It's definitely not something I want to hide. But I do think it's an important thing because it has made me into who I am. And now this huge imposter syndrome hinders me. It annoys me. And at the same time, I'm starting to notice a new development because it's also um, what allows me to stay, well, let's stay humble,
Hmm.
um, because it is also the thing that keeps me on the ground, that keeps me from thinking, well, actually, it keeps me from becoming arrogant in some sort of way. Um, because I have a good brain. I have a nice job. I have a nice family. If you look at how my life looks like, it could be everything to become an arrogant person. So the way I grew up, how I was treated when I was younger, influenced me hugely into becoming, well, this not so overconfident person, which I now see also has its good sides. So that is, I think, well, something I'd like to share about what not everybody knows about me, and it could be an interesting aspect.
Yeah, I really like that you bring the positive side, whatever version that means, of imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
um because yeah, I always keep thinking either people have imposter syndrome or they have hugely confidence in all kind of things,
Hmm.
and there seems to be very little ground in between. It feels
Hmm.
like many people feel like, or either on one side, and maybe
Hmm.
some people are on both sides depending on the topic or some of the things.
Yeah.
um it's is this when you, I don't want to go too much into the details with your father, but when you grew up, when you realized, when you learned about imposter syndrome, um what, how easy was that for you to recognize that you had imposter syndrome?
Very difficult, and that takes a long time. And I'd say that's for most people. Um, Also, of course, because even the word imposter syndrome, I don't think I knew that years ago. And that's also something that's become, well, let's say popular. I mean, it's flying around everywhere. Um, So I didn't have a word for it, but most importantly, and I think, I mean, it's for me, it's not that big a thing. On the other hand, because it's, well, it's just something I carry, like we all carry things in life, from the way we grew up, from, well, from our past. But it was definitely not something I recognized. Also because I think part of it is that you think, oh, this must just be me, stupid me, it must just be me. So I think it's part and parcel of it that you're not aware that, well, maybe this
Have a
imposter.
whole gang. There's lots of you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We could start a party, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we can joke about this, but I think it's this is why I'm asking because I think both of us we know lots of people who are struggling with this,
Yeah.
and I think it's really helpful the more we talk about it, um, especially because I think when I work with young people, especially young women,
Hmm.
let's say somewhere in between 20 and 30 years old, they a lot of them struggle from this but don't realize that people who are then older, like yeah, I'm in my 50s, you're in your 40s, are still struggling from it, but we already understand a bit where that's
Yeah.
coming from,
Yeah.
and they think, but yeah, you already are there, and you yeah, no, 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 we still have that,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and I think that's so important to share that.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, thank you for doing that. Thank you for adding that because, of course, the whole social media these days also makes it appear as if we all have a perfect life.
Hmm.
And that's also why I introduced myself the way I did. Because if you look from the outside, everything might look perfect, whatever perfect may be, I don't know. But it's good to add this that, well, it's been a struggle. It's still a struggle, even though I can also see the positive side now. um, and I think, well, I think you're right in saying, well, particularly young women. I mean, it's you're not crazy, is what I like to say to them. And it takes
And
time, and you'll get there. But yeah,
and is this something you share also, or you discuss with your children, or they? I don't know the age. Is there? Are they too young, or do they understand these kind of things already?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I have a 13-year-old daughter, so we definitely,
Perfect age to talk about it, I
absolutely,
would
yeah,
say.
and we do, when we do, yeah, 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 yeah. That's
Yeah.
I think it's important for young women to realize. The other day, I was chatting to her about mansplaining. I was trying
Hmm.
to explain to her what mansplaining was, and then she 13 years of age already had a few examples of. She likes to go bouldering, so the indoor
Mhm.
climbing, and then she's pretty good, I'd say. Um, and then there was she was trying one thing, and then there was this older guy who was explaining to her what she was supposed to be doing. And, well, she already thought, well, no, I can't, because I can't reach there. I already tried that. And then up until 3 times he kept repeating his advice, and then at the fourth time she was so annoyed that she just climbed the whole bloody thing without not following his advice. And she was very annoyed by this. And then so we have these kind of conversations on,
Mhm.
well, how it is to be a woman, let me put it that way. Anyway, we're diverting.
Yeah, but no, but well, diverting and at the same time sharing something that I think is rather important for young people and more specifically for young women to realize, because this is well, like what you were saying, you didn't know this about until I don't know what age, but probably not at age 13.
No.
And I think that is much really important to share with our children
Yeah.
about yeah everything that is happening in that way,
Yeah.
because it's well we live in a society indeed that is doing a lot of mansplaining to women, and that
Yeah,
yeah, that makes it rather hard.
yeah,
And I think indeed you talked about social media showing the good sides, but I think on social media it's even harder for young women getting all kind of inappropriate DMs and
yeah,
from
yeah,
really inappropriate, but also like what you say, advice things that is like, yeah, that's also kind of another version of inappropriate, I would say.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
interesting thing. Okay, let's move to that next question. That if you had not been doing what you've been doing now, do you have any idea what would have become of you?
Well, I love this question. This is far easier to answer than the previous one. Although the answer is it's actually funny. I could have been anything. Well, not anything. I mean, there's things that I'm really not that interested in, and I'm not capable of doing. And when I was really younger, I wanted to be a jet. No, not a jet, a fighter pilot. So
Wow.
like an F-16. But I wasn't tall enough, so that was a dream shattered before it could even properly blossom. Because
But wait, because you go very fast. You weren't
yeah,
tall enough. Is that
well,
something you discovered by looking it up, or did you
yeah,
actually apply? How did it?
no, no. Well, thankfully there was someone on my school, a teacher, I think, who said, "Oh, you do need to look that up if you're actually tall enough to do that." And so I looked that up. I think when I was in second grade or something, and then so it was easily discovered. And I lacked 5 centimeters or something, so it wasn't in the millimeters. It was just too
Right.
much. So that clearly became that rather quickly became very clear that that wasn't going to be a dream that could be that could blossom, which is fine, by the way, because later on I grew into pacifism, so I wouldn't want to be a F-16 fighter pilot anyway. But anyway, that's um,
Well, well, it depends a little bit on, because if I look at Belgium, I think we're the fighter pilots that we have, they, and probably in the Netherlands, I don't think we're going so much on attacking, but might be all kind of other kind of things maybe. So I'm
yeah,
not sure,
no,
but yeah, right. Being in the army is
yeah,
probably
I
not
don't know.
something. Yeah, but
I don't know,
that's
but it's a good remark. I mean, of course, well, thankfully, in our part of Europe, that at the moment that's not an item. But
mhm,
anyway, so I mean, but there is many things I would find interesting, and I could have done, I think. But
mm,
the simple answer is I would have been a teacher, and I'll also tell you that every now and then, well, maybe even yearly, I have moments that I think, well, if you talk about jobs that really matter to society, where you can help young people and really try and make a difference, then being a teacher is one. So I often still think, well, maybe I should change jobs and become a teacher. So if I hadn't been, well, let's say, diverted into agility and product management, I probably would be a teacher.
way with what you're doing, are you not always partly a teacher? I would say when you,
Yeah,
the way we, well, I've seen you speak at conferences. There is definitely a lot of teaching going on at that moment. I assume you do the same things when you work with teams and etc. Um, but is there, and how is that different for you? I mean, like, because of course this is the work field, and it's not working with children or with young adults. How would be a teacher for you be different?
well, I think the young adult part is important because it's a different, let's say, target group. um, and I think, oh, and I'm now going to say something really dangerous. I already touched on sustainability.
Mm,
I think we are, well, we should be doing everything we can to help our future generations, to give them some sort of a future. And then I think, well, all the work I do as a product owner, a product person in infrastructure, I love what I do. I really do. And I often also think, but it really doesn't matter. If we don't save the planet altogether, then none of it really matters. And then I often think, well, imagine I would be a teacher of, I don't know, maybe Dutch language or English. That's probably where I'd end up. That would give me an opportunity to talk to kids about climate and about, well, how the world is going to look like and how, let's say, how you can help kids to be resilient, give them some agility, because they are going, well, we're all living in a, well, increasingly VUCA world, but they'll have it, well, I don't know, 100 times worse than we have it now. So I'd like to teach them some extras, or not teach them, I don't know, inspire them and give them some extras to sort of help them. Well, this is going to sound really doomish, but sort of help them survive, give them more tools to thrive in the world to come. So that is something, well, I try and do that at work. I really do. But sometimes I think, well, at school, maybe that would be more of an opportunity. And then at the same time, Eve, I think about the teachers I know who are drowning in administration, in administrative work, in all the sheets and the stuff they need to keep track of. They don't have time to have these conversations. So maybe I'm far too idealist anyway. But so the answer to the question would be I'd be a teacher, I think.
Last part, because I wouldn't say a friend, but someone that I work professionally with has started a part-time job this year, so well, last year in September. And actually, I recently discovered that for next year in September, she will stop again. And I don't know enough of the details, but it's, let's say, it's pretty clear that administrative tasks
Yeah,
are the main reason for not doing that. And
yeah,
yeah, I was kind of hoping it's less in the Netherlands, but I'm afraid that your answer already shows that it's a little bit
yeah,
everywhere.
no,
So yeah,
no,
that is
yeah,
but that, yeah, for me there was, and that was also something like for me for a very long time. I said I think about, or I thought about ending my career as teaching, but then more at yeah, maybe university level, or somebody that wants to learn about agility and programming from the field, not people who just learned it theoretically, but really from bringing my experience back. But all these kind of horror stories make me think. I hope, and I think it's less in these environments. So not with from the people from the moment on that they're what is it, 1920 or something like that. But still, it scares me about yeah, how much of that is really yeah, is really taking part of the job and allowing that.
no. Yeah, unfortunately, I think that's a bit of the same everywhere, also at universities and HBOs or high schools. So, you know, maybe we're just too idealistic. We're just dreamers, Eve. Maybe it's just as well we don't end up teaching.
I don't know, but yeah, just like you, I think I'm already teaching a lot and helping
Yeah.
a lot of people. And I know that I've been contacted by my former high school to help out for a couple of years. I did pair programming training and other kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It stopped at during Corona for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But actually I should recontact them and say, okay, why don't we retry to do something? Because I really want to bring some of that value. And
Yeah.
maybe that's for me the better option, not being a full-time teacher, but still from time to time giving some of that. So to give something back to
Yeah.
society.
Yeah, that's it. I like that you mentioned that, Eve. It's that's inspirational for me too. I did a guest lecture at the University of Madison on invitation of a friend, and I really like that too. And so now you're inspiring me, and I think, well, maybe I should contact her, and well, you know, maybe that's an option too, to do that occasionally
Mhm. Yeah,
without being all tied into it. Yeah.
Exactly. And it will it well, for me it helps, or what I've learned at that time, it helped out also the teachers learning something from reality. So for
Yeah,
them it created some things. Sometimes I even, in one of the occasions, I even had all professors joining into a pair programming session, and
nice.
even saying, I remember that, yeah, I don't know how it's called, the dean of the
Hmm.
department, saying that, so that, I in my eyes, that's the most experienced developer from all these people. And I remember him saying, of yeah, I've learned from something from everyone. And one of the people that he worked, what he paired with, was a student who was like, when did we do it? I think November. So it's like 6 weeks into something. So you don't have a lot of experience. And there is that dean that said, hey, I learned from everybody something. And
Yeah,
sometimes it was as stupid as a shortcut or a library, doesn't matter.
yeah,
There is that experienced guy saying, hey, this was a guy learning, I learned something from everybody else.
yeah,
So that
yeah,
is kind of nice. As I do remember looking, I was looking at that student, that the youngest student of that, who really, I saw a smile on his face. I thought, wow,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
so powerful if
yeah,
people can say that.
yeah. I love that. Yeah.
Let's move to that next question. What do you consider your biggest challenge, that, and why is that a good thing for you?
Um, well, the biggest challenge, well, there's actually two answers, if you allow me. So the first answer, and we're not going to spend too much time on that, I'd say, because we already spoke about that. That is my juggle with the imposter syndrome, which
Hmm.
is sometimes hindering me and also brings me good things occasionally, I do realize. Um, so that is a challenge, and it has its good sides for me, but we already spoke about that. um, Another real challenge for me is I I work in product management. Let's say product owner, product person. I never know what to say, and I picked Roman Pichler's term of product person because I want to stay away from the product owner, which then moves me into the Scrum framework. And so let's say I do something in product, and I firmly believe in shared product ownership. I do firmly believe that it's not the product owner, it's not me, nor any other product owner who suddenly becomes godlike, as if then because they are the product owner, they suddenly know everything and know everything that should be done and should prioritize. And well, I know stakeholders have priorities and what have you, but as if suddenly the product owner is that one and all knowing, well, entity, identity, um, that you should give all that power to. I don't believe that that's true. Um, and I don't want to be like that. And I don't believe that brings out the best, well, in the team, nor for the product. Now, to you and to your viewers, to our viewers, that's nothing new. They should all be watching this and saying, well, of course you don't want to be, of course you want to share your product owner responsibilities. Of course. However, in reality, I think this is really difficult because there is management around that sort of thinks, well, hey, you're the product owner. I expect you to do this. And then I try and explain, well, this is, I'm accountable in the end, but it doesn't mean I have to do everything. But they still
You're
think,
walking away from your responsibilities. How dare
exactly,
you?
exactly, exactly. And I also notice that teams, well, some things they like, um, but well, especially with infrastructure teams. I once had a team, and I said, "Well, you're building a platform for other software teams, and these teams are just around the corner. They're on the other side of the corridor. So go and talk to them, ask them what they need." And they were so annoyed. I mean, of course, at first it took time and what have you, but still, in the end, they were like, "Well, I don't like talking to customers. That's your job. I just want to code." And um, So that is my real challenge at work. I know what I believe in, and I know that's, well, to the book. I mean, that's according to the book. This is how it should be done. So I know I'm not saying something spectacular or new or anything. And I think that that's really difficult to do. That is my big challenge, how to sort of implement that shared product ownership in a way that I can thrive, but far more importantly, the teams, the organizations, and the products can thrive so that we can really make the best possible product. It's not so easy.
Something that you um, somehow expect that it would have been easier for you?
Yeah. 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 And I think that ties back into what you mentioned. Uh, we often get taught things and they sound so simple, and people on the sideline, they think, well, but they haven't been with their feet in the mud. It sounds
Mhm.
really easy, but this is really so. I remember when I started as a scrum master, I did a PSM course, um, and a PSM2, I think, so a slightly more advanced course. And I was really struggling at that time with the sprint goals with my team. I'm talking a while ago. I was really struggling.
Mhm.
And I remember I brought this question with me to that course because that was really the reason I wanted to do that course. It was with Bali and Christian. And I really was looking for advice from other people like, how do you do this? And then I kept getting the answer, oh, it's not that difficult. You just start with the sprint goal. And then I was like, and at one point I also got annoyed because then well, you know, I asked them, okay, so when did you last work with a sprint goal? And then it turned out none of them had actually done that. So that's
Wow.
another example of, oh, it's so easy to say how it should be done, but it's not so easy to actually do that. And this is also what I find with the shared product ownership. It sounds really easy, really logical. It sounds totally natural, and I do find it a challenge.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. This is for me why well, when you work with a team of coaches, if especially when you're working for a large company, there's sometimes lots of coaches running around. And for me, I find it important that at least a part of these people have done the actual jobs of the people they're coaching.
Yeah,
If it's development, if it's product owner, if it's scrum master, yeah, it's there is a theory, but it's actually doing. This is the main reason why I'm
yeah,
working today as an engineering manager. I've coached many
yeah,
engineering managers, and I've done parts of that job under different kind of names in the past. But I want to keep going back to these kind of roles every X time. And right now, I'm really happy, and I don't look forward to changing that. But for me, it was a really important thing to say, I
yeah,
want to step out again out of the coaching, to
yeah,
be again with my feet in the mud and feel the difficult part about, okay, how do you connect with your team without, okay, I can join retros, I can join dailies, but I know it will create less safety. So yeah, okay,
yeah,
that is a hard challenge. A remote even harder. So okay, that's we need to be in that role to feel
yeah,
that again. And yeah,
yeah,
and like you say,
absolutely.
there are no standard answers. The standard answers, they are simple, but they're not easy.
Yes.
That's a little bit
No,
that
exactly.
that
Yeah,
that's yeah, and
yeah,
then working with people. I really like your example also from developers that say, "Well, I just want to code. I don't want to talk to people. Leave me alone." Like so
yeah,
recognizable.
yeah,
And I understand in a way because developers, well, they need much more focus time. So I can see both parts, both value things, and yeah, what is the balance that we can find, and that is so. Thanks for sharing that because I think it's a real it's a real example of a difficulty from people, from someone working on the floor and struggling with some of these things.
yeah,
And I think that's, like you say, it's important because sometimes indeed in courses or in conferences, people speak from so much theory. And the funny thing, I have the feeling, is that the more you are experienced, the more you challenge some of that things. When you bring, or at least if that's the feeling I have, when you bring things from experienced people, then say, no, 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 but that won't work in
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about years of practice,
Exactly.
and then others are just talking from the books,
Yeah.
never done it, and yeah, like
Yeah.
and don't even be questions because it sounds so simple.
Yeah.
Yes, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
and so do it sounds like a struggle that you're completely in and you haven't solved already, because that's indeed the question. So why is there what's the good thing about that for you?
It there's two good things about it. One thing is it pushes me to keep growing, evolving, learning as a product person. So it makes me go that extra mile and try and find what would be the best way to balance this or that now at this point, whatever the challenge is at that point. So it helps me, it stimulates me to keep evolving, which is important for me because I get bored easily. So
Hmm.
otherwise, I'd be bored out. Um, and the other thing it brings me is that it opens up worlds. If you think, no, let me give you another answer. There is a Stoic saying, I think it's a quote by Marcus Aurelius, who says that if you can't learn anything if you think you already know everything. You need to open your mind because you don't know what the answer is, else you won't learn anything. And so what this brings me, this struggle, this I don't know what to do, I don't know how to solve this, it makes things interesting and it makes me ready to learn. It helps me to keep an open mind. And if everything would go smoothly, I probably would stop learning. That's also what they say, that well, the best that you learn from bad experiences, usually not from good experiences, because they're just comfortable and they'll just you stay in your comfort zone, and then
And you
so
don't realize that that you actually done something good in a way because
yeah,
it feels natural and whatever.
yeah,
I really
exactly.
like that.
Yeah. So it brings me two things, but they boil down to they keep me going and learning and in evolving and doing new stuff, trying out new stuff.
And
um
in that way, you also mentioned something that is really important for you because you want to keep learning and you want to not get bored, because
yeah,
both things are really important, it seems, for you as well.
yeah,
It's
absolutely, yeah,
and I think as a product, well, you didn't want to call it product owner, a product person, I think there is always enough to learn about new things in the way, and yeah,
yeah,
there's also that in that way it sounds like a perfect job for you in a way that, yeah, this is a place where there, well, we keep evolving.
yeah,
The product will keep evolving. You can keep evolving. The companies, the customers you work with, there is always new things to do that.
yeah, definitely, yeah,
And so something I sometimes see with people is that within IT, because of that, exactly that, there is a lot of things to learn. I also see sometimes that people, when they're in their 20s or 30s, they really love that. But once we get older, 40, 50, 60, I see people like, oh, I have to keep learning. Is there a part of you that was at some point feeling a hard time to keep learning, or is that so much energizing that you feel that this is a good part?
that's a really good question. Thank for asking that. um Not so much age related, I think, but in my last assignment, I worked with a far too big product, with not enough support, with too many wonderful people to work with, say 5.5 teams. I was almost burnout. I pulled out early enough to sort of save myself, but that was too much. And that was
Wait,
then also,
you were product person for 5 teams.
yeah,
So you as a person, because I always the so it reminds me of sorry, I'll steal the story, but it reminds me of when I started teaching people about Scrum. I always used a picture of Superman for the product owner.
Mhm.
And the story I always said is that we all know what happened with the actor who played Superman. He ended up in a wheelchair, and because he was playing some, well, of course, that's not related to the movie, but the story I make up there is that he was playing something that he wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think what for me, what I've seen with many teams is that once a team is really good, they outperform always their product person.
yeah,
Because like if you have 5 to 7 people, how the hell could you get
yeah.
up to speed as one person? And now you're talking about 5 teams, so I'm thinking about 30 people. There's no way you can keep up with that.
No,
So
absolutely.
so yeah, so of course this company, if they don't put a system in place, and okay, then you definitely need to have developers also talking to customers and other kind of things, because they need to help out, because you can't do it on your own. But if there's no system in place, well, it's a recipe for burnout. So
Yeah,
I think you were
yeah.
really good to see that. Was that something you realized while you were there? I mean, in the job, or were you like, "Hey, I'm happy I can work with 5 teams," or how does that?
No, it's a long story. We'd need another another episode for that. But it's there were promises before I started about support, about other product people brought in, about sharing the load, putting the system in place, as you so nicely
Mm.
put it. But none of that really happened for all kinds of
Hmm.
reasons. So there was already a point 3 months in where I said, well, if it's not going to change, I'm going to go. I'm going to go down. So what are we going to do? And then there were some movements, but well, in the end, it just took too long, at least for me. Um, and as far as I've understood, they're still busy trying to put the system in place. So I do appreciate that I made it transparent. Well, I helped make it transparent. And they're now trying to put the system in place with more product people for this group. Well, the product was infrastructure. Um, so they're putting more people in place there to fix their system, to fix this for the organization, because otherwise it's never, well, the next one is going to go and walk out as well. So I'm really glad I pulled out in time after a few warnings. I said, well, if this is it, then if we're not changing it, I have to go, because else I'll go burnout, and
Change
I
the
don't want
organization. You change the organization.
that.
Change the organization in a way.
Yeah,
Was that message received in a way that you tried to do it? They couldn't do it or whatever. Maybe you pulling out helped them to really understand the problem better.
I
So,
well, I hope so. On the other hand, they're still trying to fix it. So,
mm.
um,
Well, if something that went wrong for a couple of years, you can't fix it in just 2 days.
no,
That's you
no,
need a lot of time there. So that's
no,
that's not
clearly,
unlogical.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. But anyway, to come back to your question, your original question here, that was a time that I really noticed, and that frightened me, maybe most, that I just had no mental space to learn anything. I
mm,
was just too tired. I was just too much on my toes. I don't know if you can say that in English, but it was too hard for me to keep up, or try and keep up and try and stay afloat at least. Um, and then I started noticing that I had no energy to learn, and that was a super red flag for me.
That's but thanks for sharing that, because I think it's so important that we realize that and I think indeed I've seen something similar happening during Corona, where people I remember a woman I coached that was so almost beating up herself, like, yeah, I wasn't able to learn. I was like, you were busy surviving. I
Yeah.
mean, you were at home with every craziness of everything. You were not allowed to go out,
Yeah.
meeting friends and whatever. That is what she was, a very extroverted person. So she needed to have contact with people. She was left out of that, being at home with just little kids. Yeah, of course, there is
Yeah.
almost no mental space for learning anymore. You're already learning to survive and live in
Exactly.
learning in a new world, in a new environment. And I think this is so important for people to realize, like, well, I don't know how it was for you, but when I first became a parent, the first year, that was like, okay, there's so much else that you need to learn. Like,
Yeah.
no way that you can learn a lot of other stuff. So
No.
yeah, there is a
No.
lot there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's yeah, we
Yeah.
need to, and I think we need to make much more awareness for the people around us. Like, wait, there is a limit of what you can learn. If you're learning in one part of your life, there might be other parts where
Yeah.
that's not possible. And you were trying to survive, trying to teach a company about how to deal with that, and doing all of that. Of course, there was no more space for learning anything else, I would say,
No.
on top of that. So
No.
definitely
No.
that was correct.
Clearly. Yeah. Yeah.
So thanks for sharing it. I want to move to that next question. What drives you? Because let's face it, you're just like many other people in the podcast here. You're a very driven person. You're very passionate about lots of things, about changing the world, about, well, helping creating a better world for your children. I think that is definitely what something that I've seen you talk about and care about. Do you know what drives you? Where that passion is coming from?
Yeah. It's a very selfish drive. Uh,
Mm,
I like to share that. It's a. It's actually, um, in the Netherlands, probably the same as in Belgium. Maybe this is not something that all of our viewers know. But in the Netherlands and in Belgium, the Second World War is still in our collective memory.
mhm.
Things that happen still is that kids ask their grandparents, "What were you doing during the war?" Uh, and really, what they're asking is, were you a good person or were you on the Nazi Germany side of things?
Mm,
So, this may not be something that is alive and kicking everywhere, but definitely in the Netherlands and in the family and the family line I came from, this is something that we spoke about. And at what point, when when I got kids, I only have one daughter and a well, as we call in Dutch, a bonus son. So my husband Edwin has a son, so he's a sort of I have an extra a bonus son too. When I got when I got a kid, so when Iris was born, I started to realize that you want to leave the world a bit of a better place for your kids, and you want to leave them with a better future. And that's all true. I mean, of course, the simple answer is what drives me is, well, I want to make the world a better place so I can leave the future generation a bit of a better world. But the real answer is, Eve, that at some point, my daughter, or maybe her kids, or maybe the kids of my bonus son, they'll ask me, Grandma, when you knew that there was a huge climate crisis emerging, what did you do? And then I realized when I started thinking about this, and this is my selfish answer, I want to be able to say, well, I did everything I could. And it probably wasn't enough. You can never do enough. But I want a clean conscience. I want to be able to say that I did my best. That's what drives me, my own conscience.
but that's yeah, because in a way we all want our children, our grandchildren, to be proud of us, and we want indeed to have a clear conscience, and that's some of that stuff that is yeah. I didn't see it as selfish, but I do understand why you call it selfish, because I think it's, yeah, it is part, again, what you started out in the beginning to say, I want to be a good person, and I want to, so that is indeed the kind of thing. And of course, I think even the worst people, or many of the worst people, still consider themselves good because they live in a different kind of world where they think they do different kind of things. Um, I have a friend, or well, yeah, someone with who I went to high school that is now a cabaretier. So he's singing and he's making sketches. But he also wrote a book a couple of years ago about my dad was with the SS,
Mm-hmm.
and that was like, wow, coming to terms with understanding. He was, yeah, indoctrinated in a lot of the Flemish part on what we would call the wrong side of the war, and that is, yeah, I never knew that when I was with him in school,
Mm-hmm.
but I learned so much, and I learned also about his struggle to get out of that and to be now on a completely different side, and at the same time, without, I would say, negative about these people, because he also knows how many of them got manipulated in a way that he feels manipulated by that. But I found it a very strong story when I learn about that. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, he saw himself, and when I was playing with him, well, playing, I was, I don't know, 16 or 17, so I should already be aware about some of that stuff, but I
Mm-hmm.
was totally not aware, probably because it wasn't something he was openly talking about at that time. But still, at the time, he was still in that indoctrination, and
Yeah.
trying to figure out, how do I fit in this whole thing. And
Yeah.
I think that is so crucial and important. Like you say, you want, I think, well, most of us, we realize that there is a problem with climate and we need to do something about it. And yeah, I recently also had a discussion with someone about, like, okay, yeah, you can have cheaper electricity there and there. It's like, yeah, that's true, but I prefer to have green electricity. I don't want it to be coming from coal and even nuclear. I prefer not to
Mm-hmm.
do it for money and many kind of things. And I don't want to blame others for making choices, because I do understand the financial situation that these people are
Yeah.
in. But at the same time, I want to say, oh, but I have, in my job and in my thing, I have the possibilities, and okay, then I can buy maybe some less clothes or whatever, but I find this even at that level twice good. So
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and I think that's also an important lesson to also give our children, like, hey, wait a minute, that's why we're spending money there and there, and
Yeah.
and how to do that. So that is a very yeah, nice story. I think that's a nice thing, that is a drive. And I want to go also back a little bit. Do you know when that started to click? So you already said you were talking about that when your first child was born. Was there already some of that passion of drive for being a good person in you before? Like, I see, the reason why I'm asking is I see a lot of teenagers. We all think we want to change the world. Was there already someone in you at that level, or is that more really?
Yeah, well, yeah, that was already there. I was a member of the youth socialist movement while in high school. Um, so I've always been passionate about making the world a better place. Um, I can't really remember when that started. There's another example. I remember being in university. I graduated in sign language and neurolinguistics.
Wow.
And I remember having my first college class. Not sure how you say that in English. My first college. And it was about, well, the theory of sign language. And I remember sitting
And
there.
what triggered you to go for sign language?
Well, no, sign language was at that point was one of the obligatory
Ah, right. It was not a
courses.
choice.
No, not at that point. And I graduated. I'll tell you quickly. That was really interesting. I did a research in whether there was any difference in the acquisition of sign language which of course has a visual um, as visual input, so to speak, instead of auditive input, and well, let's say physical output instead of sound output. Is there any difference in how this language is acquired as to where it is acquired in your brain? So basically, where is
Oh.
sign language in your brain? Is there any difference between sign language and spoken language? The quick answer, by the way, is there isn't. If you make just a regular sign, just you point somewhere, it's a different part in your brain that gets activated than if you're actually using language or sign language. So what matters is that it's language, not the fact that you're signing it. But anyway, so I remember this very first class I had, and I was sitting there, and there was this professor, and he started explaining that it used to be so 100 years ago that deaf people had to sit on their hands because people at that point in time thought that if you allowed them to sign, which is what deaf people start doing naturally because they find ways to communicate, but if you'd allow them to sign, they'd stop wanting to learn spoken language. So what they did 150 years ago is they had to sit on their hands, they had hands tied behind their back and all kinds of horrible things, because people genuinely at that point thought that, well, then they'll never learn. And I remember sitting in that first course, sitting in that first college and thinking, this is unfair. I need to do something. Well, I mean, of course, it wasn't like that anymore, but still, I sort of, that motivated me in thinking we have to do something about, well, we have to make sure that sign language gets acknowledged as a proper language. And so I've always had that sort of, I don't know, make the world a better place, whether it is regarding the climate, sustainability.
And did you practice or did you learn sign language? And are you a bit? Yeah.
A bit, yeah. It's I can do a bit of signing. I could ask my way. I could say good morning. I could ask for a coffee, but it's not as if I could properly. Well, I don't know.
And recognize, or that's even harder, I assume. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's well, I could get, as I say, it's about as good as my I don't know, my Spanish. I could order a coffee, but that's not about it.
Okay, but still better than most other people, I
No,
would assume. So that's the list. But thanks for sharing that, because that's indeed, um, yeah, shown another part of where that drive and that passion is already. And yeah, this is, yeah, I like to see that also and ask with people, because sometimes some people only discover that later, but with you, there definitely was already,
yeah,
I would maybe say, an activist at that level, or
yeah,
you, at least you had that
yeah,
desire to become an activist and
yeah,
think
yeah.
about that. So
Yeah, I
that's
like how you say that. Eve, there is now a moment that I do have to leave you for a second. That doesn't going to
okay.
take an awful long time, but I do have to put the light on here because I see I'm becoming well, how do you say that? Less pixely. So I'm going to turn
Yeah,
the
but
light
that's
on.
fine. That's fine. Go ahead.
Now our viewers can now see that I have an empty bookshelf behind me.
Well, they heard in the beginning that you just moved into a new place, so you
Yeah.
still have all the excuses for filling. And knowing you, I think there is enough books to fill it, but
Mm.
just not enough time to have already unpacked everything, I would assume.
No, I'll have to
So,
tell you that I made priority boxes in
mm,
my bookshelves, and I unpacked three of them. And I'll tell you, or maybe I'll even show you. Look, there is the product management. Here is the climate section. And then here we've got philosophy. So
okay.
Oh my
that shows and meet the priorities already. And
exactly.
but I really like that it's not just one category, that is multiple kind of categories that are important for you and multiple parts of life. I think that is already very, very nice. We'll jump into books later on, so we'll learn about that. I want to go to that next question. What do you consider your biggest achievement so far? And maybe before we jump in that, basically this is your moment to brag. You already told a little bit about imposter syndrome. Is it easy for you, Maryse, to brag and to really take the place there?
No, but that is it's. I don't know. My biggest achievement is maybe that I. Okay, I'll tell you what felt like a big achievement is that I had a person in that last assignment I told you about where I almost went burnout. And there was this guy, and he really wanted to do some, I think it was Kubernetes. It doesn't really matter what it was, but he found it difficult in the role that he was in, and he didn't get a chance to get there. And then I sort of fought for him, giving him the opportunity to learn. So we talked about it, and he got opportunities to start and play around with it. So he left, I left, we both left that company. Um, and half a year later, 9 months later, this guy sent me a message on LinkedIn saying that he was now working in, I don't think it was Kubernetes, but it doesn't matter, in that, whatever it was that he wanted to do. And he just wanted to thank me because I inspired him to push and to keep at it. That felt like a big achievement, Eve. That is really, then I thought, okay, so I've done something good here. This guy has found what he wanted to do, and that felt like an achievement, like a big achievement.
I can definitely see that, because it's, yeah, it even, well, you were not able to change the company and make him go for that, but still he left and realized that, hey, wait a minute, it's not because I cannot do it at this particular company
Yeah,
that this is not where I want to be go and do. And I think that is also very important, that when we sell messages to people like, oh,
yeah,
wait a minute, maybe for whatever reason you can't do it in this company, but maybe that's actually why you need to leave.
yeah,
I remember a person I worked with, that at that time, that he had a big desire to do something where I knew that the company was he was working for, or where we both of us were, that would not be an option, but for multiple kind of reasons, basically also that the company didn't need that profile full time. So yeah, that was definitely not a good choice for that person. And so yeah, having these kind of conversations are not easy conversations, but at the same time I think are important conversations for people to realize, hey,
yeah,
wait a minute, it's not because company X or Y doesn't need that I wouldn't be able to do that to good.
yeah,
Sometimes the best thing is to part both ways and do
yeah,
it somewhere else. And that person not just did it, but also remembered that, hey, there
yeah,
was someone who
yeah,
basically advocated for me or convinced me, or I don't know
yeah,
what you did, but somehow that person realized that I wouldn't be here without you.
yeah, yeah, and took the
And that's
effort of sending me that note. That really felt, well, I'm very grateful, but it also really felt like, hey, I did something real good here. So
Mhm.
that felt like an achievement. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think it's really important to stress out that that person took the time to do that, because let's face it, we don't do that enough. I think I'm trying to multiple times a year take the time to really thank people. Even just today I shared a video on a very funny scrum thing,
yeah,
daily scrum from hell,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is
I saw that.
which is a video that for me made huge difference, and I've used it with a lot of scrum people that I've well worked and coached with. And yeah, I thought, hey, this is important to also again thank Boris Gloger and yeah, I'll forget everybody that's in there, but there was like lots of people that
Yeah,
made that. and that made that video so fun to recognize what is. And this is just a funny example, but I really think it's important that we do
Yeah.
that enough to tell people like, hey, wait a minute, this is the effect that you had on me. Uh, because I think sometimes I don't know how big that conversation was with that person, but sometimes for me there is no link between a large conversation and a large outcome. It could be just one word that I'm saying that has a large effect,
Yeah.
or I could have a long conversation that basically has no effect. There is no correlation.
No.
And telling people like, look, that one sentence or that one word had that impact is really important.
Yeah.
So that sounds like a really nice achievement. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
That is really really great. Let's move to that next question. Do you have a personal agility tip to share?
Yeah. Small is beautiful.
Hmm.
And we all know that, of course. And we all know you should make things small.
That
Um,
has nothing to do with the fact that you couldn't become a fighter pilot, right?
well, I might be slightly biased, of course. No, but seriously, yeah, well, also as a small person, of course, no, but I keep coming back to make it small, make it small,
Mm.
make it small. Really, if there is one thing you do, if there is one thing you remember about agility, please let it be this. And that goes for agility, for product development, for the teams we coach, for anything. But it also goes for, I don't know, moving house, cleaning your room, whatever challenge you have. Take up the first bite, make it small, and then take it from there. Because otherwise, it will feel like a daunting task, whatever it is you're doing. So start small. And that also goes for the sustainability challenges we're facing. Speaking of daunting challenges, I mean, it's a huge challenge. There is a lot to do, and you can easily feel overwhelmed by everything that you think you should be doing. And then my answer is always make it small. What's the very first simple thing you can start doing today? And then take it from there, because from action comes another action. You won't get into action from just thinking about all the things you should do. Just start somewhere and make it, chew off a tiny bit. So make
And
it
yeah,
small.
I really like that because also the chance of failing is much smaller. Making a small step,
Yeah,
it's like babies when they start to learn to walk. They don't make large steps. Already a small step is hard enough,
yeah,
and but the smaller the steps they take, the more chance that they will keep wiggling. And I think that's with a lot of the things that we're doing. The smaller steps, the easier it is to and not every step will be good, but then at least we can wiggle a bit and learn from it. And like you say, we're on our way with once we start doing it, and then we can. Yeah, I think well, this is for me. I also learn a lot, hear people a lot about, yeah, agile is about mindset and whatever. And I agree. And at the same time, I think like most agilists learned it by doing, making smaller things and learning something, and by doing it and making it a habit. And habits is usually something we learn in very small things.
yeah.
It's you don't run a marathon by first immediately trying, I don't know, 10 kilometers. No, you learn by, okay, how long can I run for a kilometer or whatever, and then gradually we
Okay,
learn to run more and whatever. And
okay.
so I really like that. And it's also nice to have a product person talking about that, because um, I I sometimes see product people struggling with creating it small enough that it still brings value. Because in a lot of times we say, yeah, but the customer is only valuable when it's larger. Well, no, there is, yeah,
Yeah,
we can see that, but it's harder. So yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, nobody ever said it was going to be easy, but no, it's not easy being small. No, it isn't.
That's another kind of thing. But I really like that. I really like that. I want to move to that next thing about remote work. What did you learn, or what is there anything you want to share about remote work?
Um, yeah, maybe that's a bit of a strange answer, but I never liked it, and I never will like it. And
Mm.
I know that we can make it work. I don't want to end up in some sort of discussion about if I don't see the value of it and what have you. And I know there's lots of teams that do this and do this really well, but I like being in a room with my teams, not my teams, but you know what I mean.
I do.
So what I've learned is that I just don't like it,
That's
and I guess
that's all fair.
yeah,
I think this is, I really like that because I think it's important that people realize that when, for some people it's working and it's better and there are advantages, and for other people that's also, yeah, not working. And I think, well, in that way you've learned that for yourself is that you don't like it.
yeah.
Um, is that, so that means that you regularly or full time go to the offices, work
Yeah,
with people?
usually, of course. I mean, also for me, it's convenient, and I used to do that as some of us already did, probably. In government organizations, some people work from home already on Fridays, and I do that because it's convenient, of course. But if I can, and that's what I usually do, is I go to the office 3 or 4 days in the week, depending on how big the assignment is and how it works, and of course how far away it is. But I work from home occasionally. But even on the Fridays, one of my last assignments, there was hardly anyone on the floor on Friday. I'd still be there because I just prefer to be in the office and not at home.
Hmm. Okay, but that's, yeah, I think that is, um, yeah, very logical for you, I would say. I
Yeah,
think that's also important to realize that, okay, that is how it is for you at that
yeah,
moment. So I think that is, yeah, important to realize. And I think that's, this is for me one of the reasons why I like to ask that question, because it shows that many people have different ways of dealing with some of these things. So
yeah,
that's also important,
yeah.
and
And
that is important
of
to.
course, if I'm also in the luxury position of living in the western part of the Netherlands, so
Mm.
I get to pick jobs where I can travel to. So it's a luxury choice. I
And
can
when you
really
say
decide.
travel to, can I ask how long is a typical travel for you?
Yeah, yeah, you definitely you can. But anything over half an hour by train, I wouldn't pick.
Hmm.
So very often it's The Hague, which is 10 minutes by train. Of course, I have to get to the station, and then depending on where it is in The
So
Hague.
door to door, it's more than 10 minutes. It's maybe
Yeah,
half
but
an hour or
yeah,
something like that.
yeah, yeah,
But it's also, what I'm hearing is that if it's only 10 minutes by train, if the total is half an hour, there is still a lot of movement, and you're not, well, most of us in IT, we're sitting still all day, so on a chair. So it's good to have some movement at the beginning and the end of the day.
exactly.
Uh, I like, one of the reasons why I like to work from home is that I work with a walking desk, so I
Yeah,
walk a lot. But like tomorrow, I will go to Antwerp, and it's, yeah, there I have at least an hour, could be an hour and a half, that in the car, that I'm not moving at all. So yeah, that's that doesn't help me in that sense, I would say.
no, no.
So yeah. Okay, I want to move to that next question. What is a book that you have read that you want to talk about?
There
Less is
is.
more. And indeed, the one that I found, the cover, I think, is almost the same.
Yeah.
Um,
And I want to talk about this book because it's well, by far the most influential book I've read recently. And that is because actually that small is beautiful too, in a way. Um, so we've been touching on sustainability a few times. We have a climate crisis emerging. If we want to do something about sustainability in the future, which is not only about the climate, by the way. Of course, it's not only about the planet, it's also about social sustainability. And it's also about peace, and it's also about partnerships and what have you. So it's also about people. And it is also about wealth, about economy. How are we going to share the world's wealth in a fairer way? Um, since we're in the terribly rich Western part of the world, we have it so easy. We spoil the world, and then we let other parts of the world, sort of, not fix our problems, but we ship our problems off to them in a way. Here's also a bit of my socialist, communist, even maybe upbringing showing. Um, so sustainability is not only about the climate, per se. If we want to behold the world for the future generations, we really also need to start changing the system. Change the system. Don't change the climate. But it's not about people. I don't have to tell you. We need to change the system. And if we say change the system, one of the things we should do is also change the economic system, because economy is what makes the world go round. Well, not technically, but it's still far too often it's all about the money. And I think this is really a system we should change, and we can change. And this book opened my eyes to seeing what we can do to start changing the economic system. So there is a post-capitalist option. And that is what this book is about. And it opened my eyes. And basically what this book says is, less is more, less is beautiful. Do more, or maybe do even less with more, with less. So for me, this was,
Complicated, but yeah. And it's interesting because I think we sometimes see similar kind of things in the agile world. Like we say, okay, let's reduce waste. Let's see, because it's never, also with Scrum, it's not about delivering more, but it's about delivering more value without maybe producing less, and bringing more
yeah.
value. And I think that's, when I heard you were thinking about that book. I haven't read it, but immediately when I looked at the cover and everything that I found about the book, it's like, yeah, this is actually that same idea at much larger scale. Like, what do we need? I saw some, I don't know, maybe it's already a couple of months ago, but some post about, okay, how much influence we have with the number of clothes we buy, and how much, and it made me think, like, I have a huge stock of t-shirts that are, yeah, probably 20 to 30 years old, and I'm like, I don't need more. I almost buy no t-shirts, for example, because
Mm-hmm.
I get them at conferences, and that's about it. I don't need much other things, and I get some, like the sweater I'm wearing here is from my current company. I got them,
Yeah.
and I didn't feel the need to buy much more new clothes all the time. It's like my jacket is probably 3 to 5 years old, and like, yeah, I'm okay with that. And I'm annoyed with my children. Like, okay, of course, they're at an age that they still need new clothes because they grow. So that's a different kind of thing. But even the 20-year-old, I'm like, okay, do you need a coat every year? Do you need whatever? And if it's worn out, I can understand. But if it's just for
Wrong color.
fashion, wrong color, fashion, whatever, then it's
Yeah.
like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I'm struggling to teach my children that, I would say. Um, but yeah, I see that so much around me, that there is so much people that like, look, and it could be clothes, it could be cars, it could be other thing. Yes, we now have also, I would say not even a new car, but an electric car. But I've done it, because the previous one was 20 years old, and I knew when it broke down, like, okay, I'm not going to buy a non-electric car and keep driving it for another 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Yeah.
feels logical. And I just started to calculate, and I think I bought that one in 2019, probably something like that. So the year before Corona. So that's already 5 years old again. So
Yeah. Yeah.
which is for me very logical to do. Let's not keep replacing cars, bikes, whatever every time because there is a new fashion.
No. No. Now,
So
wonderful. Yeah, I like that you add that. It's so that is precisely what the book is about. uh, actually wanting less. You need less. We need less. At least here in the Western world, we're not talking about, let's say, Africa or the global South. That's a different
Mhm.
story. But we've got stuff to do here because we can make do with less. And then the interesting thing is, so this book really clicked. It has a huge influence on me. And I love that you say, well, this is actually what Agile and Scrum should be about too. I mean, it is about this too. I mean, Agile principle number 10, simplicity, maximizing the work not done. We all know this. And somehow we don't do it often enough. Just as we don't
Mhm.
do this with the clothes we buy, we keep producing new features. And of course, we teach our product owners, we teach our teams that we shouldn't be a feature factory. We've all read Melissa Perry's Escaping the Build Trap, so we know we shouldn't be a feature factory. And still, very often, I think we are. We are
Mm.
building things because we can, because there might be a customer who could be interested, who might be willing to give us money for it. But maybe we should be more moral in product development as a product owner and say, well, we don't need this. Maybe
Yeah,
we can do with less.
well, it reminds me of when Google started. Their search page was incredibly. Nobody believed it could work because Yahoo at that moment had like a homepage with a gazillion links on it, and that was how we were entering the internet. And
Yeah,
then Google started out with a search thing, with what is it, a text box, a button, and that's
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
And it was so much more powerful. Like I don't remember. I do remember struggling with finding things on the internet, and having multiple kind of start pages to start, and then I almost instantly swapped to Google
yeah,
because it was so much more useful
yeah,
with less features. Like there's just this. I typed something, boof, I got
yeah.
it.
Exactly,
That's and
exactly.
and
Yeah,
and and in a way, that's all Google has done. I mean, that page hasn't changed much.
no,
They've done a lot of other stuff, but still, the
yeah,
core aspect is still there, and they made that better.
yeah,
And I think that is so true for so many things. And sometimes it's okay. What can we remove to make things better? What can we
exactly,
do to
exactly.
make things more thing. We might experiment with a feature, and if we see nobody's using it, throw it away and
And then throw
don't.
it away, actually throw it away, because
Yeah.
we say we do that. And very often we secretly don't. And it's still hanging there. And there is applications and there is servers and there is services that we don't ever use anymore. And they're
Mhm.
still hanging around.
And costing a lot of money to maintain, and to be kept up in the air for
Exactly.
multiple kind of things. Um, I remember when we moved with our family to Bordeaux. We moved with one truck, and we had everything for a 5 people family in one truck. And well, one truck. There was also my partner who drove a car, so in that
Mm,
sense, it was a little bit more. But I still remember being so proud of that picture of a truck with all of our things, and I was like, yeah, you don't gonna, what we used to
this is it.
say, Yagni, you don't going to need more. And people say, yeah, but you probably bought stuff, and that's true, we bought stuff, but there was also stuff in the car, that truck, that we didn't use. And
Yeah,
then a friend of mine showed me a picture. She was traveling with her partner around the world. They were working, so both of them were working, and they had like 3 suitcases with them, and that was it.
yeah,
Okay, the excuse I have, we had 3 children, they didn't have any children, but I'm pretty sure that everything I took just for me was twice as much as they had with the two of them.
yeah,
And did they have to buy stuff? Yes, but I'm pretty sure that we bought even more stuff than they had. And so
yeah,
so like, what do we take with us? And it's, yeah, it's minimizing, and trying to look at what
yeah,
what we take with us,
yeah. Yeah,
at so
beautiful.
many different levels. I think
Yeah,
yeah, it's hard because, especially, well, as parents, I think well, I don't know, I did as a parent. When we had our first child, we buy all of these different things because that we think that makes us a better parent.
yeah,
And we buy so many clothes that usually the babies are able to one week they can be in that, and we have then 10 different outfits for one
Yeah,
week, and then 10 different or 20 outfits for the second week, and
yeah,
it's like, this is insane. They
yeah.
Okay, you need to how do I say, have multiple outfits, because they make them rather dirty in the first week, so there's a lot
Hmm.
of that. But still, I'm pretty sure that if we would have half of it, it probably would have
Yeah,
worked as well.
yeah,
So and that's,
yeah,
we're so much into a consumer thing,
exactly.
and we buy everything new, where, yeah, like, what, so many things that for our first child that we could have borrowed for other people that would have been just as well as good,
Yeah, yeah.
and almost no parents do that.
No,
That's
no, no. I like the parallel with how that works with kids. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
It's so it sounds like a book that I would love to. So thanks for sharing that.
yeah, yeah.
Let's move to that next question. What's a question that I didn't ask you, but that I should also ask you, and what's the answer?
Well, um, I what I like is that we should always ask questions. So it's not it's I don't have a question yet you didn't ask me and that I would have wanted to tell you about or what have you. Um, but maybe the question should be, well, what is your favorite question? But then I don't have an answer. But you know, let's keep asking questions. There's always a next question. And of course, you know, at one point we have to wrap it up and we'll meet each other again and then we'll have another nice conversation. But I maybe the question is what's the hidden power here? And then my answer would be something like, well, the hidden power of questions. You know, I just questions are so important and so often people are focused on not a conversation, but I want to tell you something, Eve. I think it is important that you know that I did this or did that or whatever. But the real power is in the questions. So, you know, when you do the questions, you have the questions, you guide the conversation. And I think that's a superpower. Questions are gold. So there's that. I don't know what the question is to that answer.
As a product owner or a product person, are there any favorite kind of questions to ask your customers?
Well, um, seeing that we just spoke about the book, I usually ask at the moment, I very often ask, do we really need this? And why? What is the actual value? What is it contributing? And very often you get answers like, oh, we'll have more users and we'll have more this, more that, which is all still capitalist, right? It's all, I mean, we say it's also the evidence based management is focused on current value and future value, or maybe I'm not saying it in the right wording, but it's all about value. But that value is still money. And if you really ask questions like, how is it affecting lives? How is it changing lives? There is a favorite example of me from the Houdini sportswear. This is a circular company, and they try and really live the degrowth philosophy in their commercial company. And they have a KPI that is, they define value as more interactions with nature. So they want to define, you know, they think they're successful as a company if they've enabled people to have more interactions with nature. Now, that is true value, if you ask me. So the questions I ask my customers are about, do we really need this? How is this contributing? What value, actual value, not monetary, but value in lives of people is this bringing? Oh, I can't hear you anymore. I don't know why, but I've lost you.
I'm still here, so I'm not sure. Okay. Then there was something else. Okay. So yeah, I really like that idea of what's the value, and indeed what can we do it without, or why do we need it? That's something. Um, how easy is that for your customers to answer that?
um, Very difficult. It's also very difficult for me because I now have the reputation I'm actually a lazy product owner. I don't want to build anything. It's of course nudge, nudge, wink, wink, but still, uh, it's not easy because we tend to think that the only thing we have, we always say, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it.
Hmm.
And I think that's true. And that also means that because some value, this true value, is difficult to measure. So customers then sort of they come back to, well, I don't know, but yeah, contributing to society. Yeah, but we can't measure that. That's not something we can't touch that, and that's all true. And still, I think it's the only thing that really matters. This is being a good person at scale, I'd say. But this is very difficult because it feels
But is
fluid.
it always how would I say it, unmeasurable? Because I remember the person that I met thanks to you, Marjolien Pilon,
Hmm.
that also had I think she has as a tagline the planet is our as a stakeholder,
Hmm.
and that she worked with a team where they actually thought about, wait a minute, how could we reduce the amount of energy our program is using, because that
Hmm.
is it's partially, well, it's very good for the planet, but at the same
Hmm.
time it's good also for the company because you're moving, well, if you use a lot more energy, it's
Yeah,
costing a lot more money. So in the end it was very valuable for the company as well. So there were ways for them to measure that, but I don't remember the details of the story anymore. But I think it was not that easy to come to that part. Like, how do you get that? Did you were you able to? I don't know. Yeah, say some more.
yeah. No, but I love that you bring Marjolein up, and yeah, I definitely do that. She's been an inspiration to that as well. The planet is. I see the planet as a stakeholder, and
Hmm.
we do that. I try and keep that in mind, and if it's harming the planet, we won't even consider doing it.
Hmm.
Still, however, the planet is difficult to talk to. So I have other stakeholders to talk to, other customers to talk
Hmm.
to, and they're usually okay talking about, well, let's say planetary considerations, um, which is good and which helps. And then very often they still come back to, okay, so this was all nice and I'd still like this build. I still think this should be in. um, so I really try and move the conversation, let's say, a spade deeper, a step further, uh, into why do you really think you need this and what is it really bringing. um, so, well, as I said, it's for me, it's a more fundamental question, in the degrowth philosophy. Do we really need this? Do we really think we need this? Um, yeah,
Yeah, I can definitely recognize that it's hard to convince people of that. So that there is, yeah, there is, because of course people always think like, yeah, but my voice or what I'm doing for the customers is that most important thing.
yeah,
And
exactly.
so getting to that mindset might be a little bit difficult for people. But I really like that you're looking into that. So that is, yeah, that is. Again, simple but not easy.
Yeah,
That is, as an idea, and then getting there and convincing people, and and sometimes you will fail, and at least I think with every time that you do that, you will make people think, and maybe there are things that never come to you because they already thought about it. Because that's part of that success with less is more, is that once you're successful, you don't know when you have actually convinced people,
oh,
because
absolutely.
at some
Yeah,
point they don't come to you anymore.
No.
and but still find other kind of ways to think. So that's really is an important thing. Okay, I want to move to that last question. Who do you think I should also invite? Is there a person that you're thinking about that I should?
Well, there is about 300 people I think you should invite. There's
I have about what's the last? I think I'm above 600 right now. I've only
exactly.
invited 300, so that's about correct.
Yeah, the world is full of interesting people. So I can think of so many people that would be wonderful. Well, it would be wonderful to them for them to have a wonderful conversation with you and to have them on your show. But the person I really thought of was Anita Kalmana Boot, or Boot Kalmana, I'm not
I
sure.
think that's her, if
Yeah,
I'm correct.
absolutely.
I didn't have
Um,
time to check the picture up front, so that's always a little bit of risk.
no, but that's her. Um, because she's doing all kinds of wonderful stuff. But what she's also doing is bringing attention to neurodiversity in teams, and
Hmm.
I think that that's a super important topic for teams to deliver their best products if they are aware of the neurodiversity in the teams and how to deal with neurodiversity, different types, different people, different, beliefs and needs in the teams. And that will, this diversity is important, and making sure we can, provide the best we can for the people what they need will also make sure that we build the best possible products. And in the end, I still would like us to have the best possible products. I'm still a product person after all. And I think she really does a great job on that. I'm losing you again. I don't know why.
Hello, hello,
Yes.
hello, hello.
Well, there
Yeah.
you are again. Yep.
Okay. Well, it's almost at the end, so
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's your headphones, or no. I'm not on my headphones here, so I should be speaking to another microphone, so that shouldn't be a problem. Anyway, well, thank you for inviting her. Like I wanted to say, for me in neurodiversity, I've worked with a couple of people in Ghent on helping out with how could we make companies much more aware. I think that is a huge thing that is really important. We're struggling already to get more women into IT, and all kind of levels. And neurodiversity is for me like that next barrier where companies most companies at this level don't even think about. There, when
No.
we talk about diversity and inclusion, that's like they don't even see that, even though I think, well, for example, for me, that's one of the advantages of remote work is that I know a couple of companies where they hired someone that was more neurodiverse, and they didn't realize it until they came back after Corona. Then they
Yeah.
realized, oh, okay, that person is actually, but by that time, that person had already proven their value to the company, and so they learned to adapt, and that remote did in a way kind of hide
Yeah.
some of these challenges,
Yeah.
and that gave more people access to work in companies where they actually could bring a lot of value that they didn't have from other people. And yeah, I
Yeah.
think that is something that is really wonderful. So I'm looking forward to talking to Anit, how do you say Anita, right?
Yeah.
Anita. Yeah,
Anita. Yeah.
I'm confused. I thought it was Anitika, so I'm like, no,
No.
that's part of her last name and on that. Okay, but thank you very much for inviting her. I also want to thank you because we're almost 2 hours of talking, and you still have energy. You said at the beginning you weren't sure, but I still feel a lot of passion, a lot of energy. If people want to connect with you, what would be a good way to find you?
Well, that's an easy answer. There is actually only one way. I am only on LinkedIn. That's the only social media thing I
And
do.
that's the one I
Yeah,
to find you.
absolutely. And of course, I mean, if I know people, we can email and we can, I don't know, you can phone me, but this is the way to contact me via LinkedIn.
And I think that works rather great, I would say. So that was
Exactly.
it. Yeah. we found each other, or I was able to contact you. It was maybe a little bit harder to pick a date, but that has nothing to do with the
No,
selecting
very
anything. That has more to do with our difficult agendas on both sides. And of course, yeah, I didn't want to talk, or we couldn't schedule it while you're busy and moving. That would have been
no.
too stressful. So that was also not a good idea. But I'm really happy that we finally found the time to have that conversation. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah,
Um, it's been wonderful. And I do hope to see you back one time again in person, and that we can have another chat in Munich or wherever we will meet next time.
exactly. Well, thank you so much, Eve. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for all your questions and the wonderful way you guide the conversation. And well, thank you for taking the time to do this.
It yeah. Uh, always loved this, but this was one of the conversations I was really looking forward to, because of a lot of the things that we've already talked about before, and it was as wonderful I was hoping that it would be. So thank you very much.
Nou, tot de volgende.
Same to you.
Okay,
Bye bye.
bye.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.